Cushionham Production.
Peace. Today's bill is going to be about this map on the screen called the Emmanuel Bowen map from the 1700s. We're going to talk about the Kingdom of Whydah or Judah as said in the map. We're going to talk about the origin of those words. We're going to look at the people who make up those tribes. We're going to look at their religion and their culture and what they were practicing. We're going to look at where they went in the slave trade and their participation in the slave trade. Too many times we hear people who deal with the theology of black Hebrew Israelites that this was a kingdom and this kingdom was of Israelites, and those are the people who came to America with that Israelite culture. In this build, I'm going to show that this has nothing to do with Israelites at all whatsoever.
All right, just recap before we get in there. The map that we're going to be discussing, you can find the primary for that, the Library of Congress. You can see the total title here, a new and accurate map of legal land and its adjacent countries. This map here is the map that we will be discussing. As you can see there, the area that we want to talk about, King of Judah or Whydah Slave Coast. This map is said to be created in London, maybe, question mark there, by Emmanuel Bowen, 1747. So what we want to know is, does this point in this map talk about kingdom of ancient Hebrew Israelites? This is what we'll be going in, right? We are now back at the book that I want to utilize by Robin Law, and I will go to my bookmarks, and what we want to find out is if this Kingdom of Whydah on this map or Kingdom of Judah has any connections to ancient Israel. Let's go to my notes, let's check them out. Bookmarks, introduction. All right, before we get to that, see it says a note on spelling. So before I read this, it's important to know that those names on that map were produced by Europeans. They were not produced by the native people, and from that point we can move further. Note on spelling. The spelling of local words and names in this study presents considerable difficulty. The foreign language can be transcribed in a variety of ways. Most accurately, a phonetic script is employed, which includes some letters additional to or with different vowels from the standard Latin alphabet. The script is not widely used in writing. However, found words and names being more commonly spelled in the standard Latin alphabet, thereby losing some of the distinctions made in the phonetic script. Very often, moreover, spelling follows French conventions, offering, for example, OU for U, DJ for J, C for K. As an illustrative example, the name of the kingdom from which that of the town Ouidah is derived may be written Xwéda in the phonetic script, Ouidah in the Latin alphabet, or Ouidah in the French spelling. Very important that we get that. Now, although Ouidah is the spelling of the town's name current nowadays, it occurs in European sources between the 17th and 19th centuries in various other forms. In English, most commonly Whydah, in Dutch, Vida, in French, Judah, and the Portuguese Ajuda. All these are attempts to render an indigenous name that would be more correctly written by modern conventions as Ouidah, or in a dialect variant, Pida. Strictly and originally, Ouidah was not the name of the town nowadays called Ouidah, but rather of the kingdom to which it belonged to in the late 17th and early 18th centuries, whose capital was Savi. The people of Ouidah belong to the same linguistic group as the Fan of Dahomey, although historically distinct from them. This language family is nowadays generally called by scholars Gibi, but formerly commonly Iwu or Aja in French colonial usage. In contemporary sources, the name Ouidah may have been noted first by Spanish missionaries visiting the kingdom of Alada to the northeast in 1660, who recorded it apparently in the form Jura Lora. More certainly, it enters the historical record in 1671 as Judah, when the French, keyword here, first established a trading factory there. Alright, so the Ouidah kingdom is the kingdom in which the town called Judah or Ouidah was town in. That town, pre-colonial times of the European, was first ruled by that kingdom, and then in 1727 you had the Dahomeyan kings who came and annexed that and made it a part of their kingdom. Moving on more. Strictly, although the town would properly be described as Ouidah, the use of this name to designate the town specifically is an origin of foreign European terminology, and in local usage even today, Ouidah remains its normal name, only in French. The correct indigenous name of the town, drumroll, which is still usually used by inhabitants when speaking in the local language, Fan, is Glihu, in French spelling Gliahu. The name also regularly occurs in contemporary European sources from the 17th century onwards. The earliest extant document written from Ouidah, a letter from an English trader in 1681, is dated quite correctly at Agrifi in Ouidah and Whydah, Glihu and Ouidah. Later Europeans used versions of this name, Glihu, interchangeably with, although less commonly than, Ouidah, for example in English, Greek, Griwi or Griwi. In French sometimes Grigui or Grigoi, but most commonly Gregory. Before we move on, we must identify who are the people who make up the kingdom that is called Ouidah, and we must understand and look at the forts by these European nations who first came to this kingdom, where these names come from. Peace. Okay, this next book that we're looking at, let's first let you get the title of this book so we make sure that we on point here. The name of this book, as you can see, is called the Historical Dictionary of Benin, 3rd edition, Samuel de Gallo. Alright, we're going to go to some of my marks in here. Where we at? Okay. Ouidah, small ethnic group, also known as Pida, closely related to the Azio, indeed sometimes confused with them, and engaged in fishing along with coastal lagoons and in Lake Ahim. The Ouidah were the founding group of the Kingdom of Whydah. Currently they number 18,000. Ouidah Kingdom, or Kingdom of Ouidah, small pre-colonial kingdom founded by the Ouidah, arriving along the coastal lagoons from Togo. Togo is not in the Levant. In the middle of the 16th century, becoming the essence the first of the Ouidah states in the area. Its political capital was Sava, called Xwéda by French traders, though the Ouidah Kingdom became renowned for its seaport. Whydah or Judah to the early traders along the coast that was consecrated to Dangbi or Dangabi. This we'll get into later, but this is called the Coat of the Great Serpent. Intermittently, they paid tribute to this at the Kingdom of Whydah. Ouidah was the main intermediary between the European slave dealers along the coast and the African slave caravans arriving from the north, without any resources except fresh food for the traders, but controlling the middleman function. Ouidah became the greatest slave port of the coast in the 17th century. In the 18th century, Ouidah fell to Dahomey in 1727 and lost its permanent position. Its last king, Hufan, ascended the throne in 1708 at age 13 and died in exile in 1733. Here's a list of the kings that we never hear our Hebrew brothers talk about. As with most king lists, there is controversy about dates. So you can see Capsi. I want you to remember that name because we're going to get into the oral tradition and the founders of that shortly. You can see their names there, all there written for you. Alright, we're going to get to the next. Alright, we're back in the Robin Law book on Ouidah, the slave import. So I spoke briefly about the European forts. And I want you to pay mind to the date of that map, which is in the 1740s. And we're going to look at the forts and how these names came to be. So the European forts. As far as the record goes, the first permanent European trading post in Ouidah, or indeed anywhere in Ouidah Kingdom, was established by Henry Karloff, a German in the service of the French West Indies Company, and has been seen in 1671. One version of the local tradition claims that even before this, in 1623, a Frenchman called Nicolas Oliver had settled in Ouidah and founded the quarter of the town called Gagny, to the west of the site of the French fort. But this story is certainly spurious. Contemporary sources do not support the suggestion of any French activity at Ouidah before the 1670s. The Oliver or O'Leary family of Denver, in fact, descended from a man who was a director of the French fort in Ouidah at a much later date, 1775. The attempt of the Olivers to claim priority of settlement may derive from rivalries for the leadership of the French community in Ouidah in the 19th century. So this is the first fort, and that will come around the 1670s, not the 1620s. We're gonna go to see what they actually called this fort. So that fort, it says it subsequently became known officially as Fort St. Louis de Gregory, i.e. Glihu. the local traditions nowadays current of the establishment of the French fort, which attributed to the reign of the fourth king of Ouidah, Ayuhuem or Ha-Eon, clearly relate to the subsequent re-foundation. So that word there you see again, Gregory, Glihu. Alright. The second European fort was established by the Royal African Company, which held the legal monopoly of English trade in West Africa at the time. First projected a factory at Ouidah in April 1681, but this was abortive. Later in 1681, a factory was established in Ouidah by an English trader called Pitley Wyburn, who was not an agent of the Royal African Company but an interpoler, that is a trader operating independently of the company and in breach of its monopoly. And this was maintained until Wyburn was forcibly removed by the agents of the Royal African Company. So, in essence, the name of this company or fort, as you can see at the bottom here, it was later known as William Fort Whydah, alluding to King William III, 1689-1703. So now you see why that name Ouidah comes, and we keep on moving. The third and last fort of the European forts in Whydah was the Portuguese. Some accounts date the foundation of the Portuguese fort in 1680. But although a Portuguese factory was indeed established in Ouidah Kingdom around this time, it appears that this was at the capital, Savi. The Portuguese fort in Whydah was in fact built in 1721. It was later known as Fort São João Baptista de Ajuda or Ouidah. It was situated east again from the English factory. So I brought the European forts up to show why they mapped these things out and through their language barriers on why these names is there. As you can see, the Portuguese Ajuda. We look back, we saw the changing of letters when you deal with the French and what they call these places. I just needed to set that foundation. Base, the Kingdom of Whydah. Alright, here it says the founder of Ouidah is regularly named in local tradition as Capsi, in French spelling Passy, who is in consequence the subject of a cult in the town to the present. We're going to talk about that very shortly. After his death, he is said to have metamorphosized into a tree that still survives as the focus of his shrine in what is known as Cap Asum, Capsi Forest, located in Tovi Quarter, or rather originally in the bush beyond Tove, but nowadays absorbed within the town. Capsi is normally supposed to have been a king of Ouidah, usually identified as a second ruler, son and successor to the founder of the kingdom, who is named as Ha-Ulo. While this has become the canonical version, however, a different account of the origins of Ouidah is given in the traditions of the Hula kingdom of Jack King. So this is another kingdom that is in the surrounding area, Hula, H-U-L-A, whose capital was originally Dahomey, but was removed after the destruction of that town by the Dahomeans in 1732. Further east to Ekpi, and subsequently after the destruction of the later in turn of 1782 to Katuno, another kingdom. These recount the migration of the Hula founder king called Capsi Passy from Grand Popo is not in Israel, to settle at Glihu, which by implication he founded. This account envisages a period where Glihu was independent of the Ouidah king Asavi, with whom Kapasi is said to have eliminated a frontier. However, subsequently, the Savi king is said to have made war on Kapsi, driving him to move east to settle at Dahomey. Alright. The former version, it may be noted, implies that Europeans were hitherto unknown, whereas the later explicitly states that Kapasi and Kapati were familiar with them already from earlier experience at Grand Popo. There is also a parallel and evidently related ambiguity about Kapti's own ethnic affiliation. Some versions claim that he was, like Kapsi, a member of the Ouidah royal family, current tradition in the contemporary family, denies this, but agrees that Kapti was Ouidah. But other accounts state that he was Hula. These two traditions of foundation by the Ouidah Kapsi and the Hula Kapsi may perhaps be regarded as complementary rather than contradictory, since Ouidah clearly included both Ouidah and Hula elements. The different stories may therefore relate to the origins of different elements within Ouidah rather than strictly representing alternative traditions of the foundation of the town as a whole. The Hula element in Whydah is represented today most visibly by the cult of Hu, the voodoo god. We read that again. The Hula element in Ouidah is represented today most visibly by the cult of Hu, the voodoo god of the sea, who was in origin the national deity of the Hula people. The priest of the cult, the Huna, nowadays has his compound in Sagbaji, the quarter of the English fort, which was established only in the 1680s, and one of the oldest established Ouidah families in the quarter, called D. Huid, claims to have invented the first Hunan to settle there, implying Ouidah priority over settlement. Very interesting. The question of priority of settlement as between the Ouidah and Hula is difficult to resolve, but Hula claims to precedents are supported by evidence relating to the hierarchy of status among the gods worshipped in Ouidah. The national deity of the Ouidah was Dangabi, the royal python, originally associated with agricultural fertility, who was incarnated in actual snakes that were maintained in his shrines. Dangabi remains today one of the most important voodoos of Whydah, with the principal shrine located in the center of the town. Now, this is what we call cultural markers that existed from a time of 500 years going all down the line. I haven't seen nothing about Jacob, Abraham, or Yahweh yet. Just keep reading. Local tradition nowadays asserts that the cult was situated in Whydah from its beginnings by the Ouidah founder hero Kapsi. And the Ouidah kingdom as a whole, as reported in the 1690s, first rank among the gods was held by Dangabi, to whom the sea god Hu was considered a younger brother. The principal shrine of the Dangabi at this period, however, was located at Ouidah, capital Sava, rather than in Ouidah. Its relocation in Ouidah being a consequence of the destruction of Save in the Dahomey conquest in the 1700s. Very interesting. Here we're looking at a map, and this comes from courtesy of Neil Newman. This map is from 1746. So at the top of this map, you see what it says there. It is the procession, the royal procession to the temple of Dangabi during the coronation of the king of Ouidah, aka Judah, aka Ouidah. Look right here at the top. See what it says there. Snake King, etc. So this is the place. This is the area where we at. I don't see I don't see any Israelite thing here. We're gonna keep on moving. Alright, we still in the Ouidah book of Robin Law. We're gonna talk about the religious life. And why do I say that? You cannot tell an Israelite by how they look. We tell through their culture. You might be able to tell through language, but it's really their culture, custom, etc. So when you're saying that a place is a group of people that are distinguished in the literature of a book, the Israelites or the Judeans or the Jews, whichever name you choose, they have a kingdom, and then this kingdom is going to be governed by their religious culture and their life, because you say, or this is what you preach, is that this was the kingdom of Jews or Judea. This was the kingdom. All right. So when we look at the religious life of Ouidah, it says today has a reputation as a center of the indigenous religion of Voodoo, expressed in the 1990s in the promotion of the ceremony of Whydah for the Seagull Who as the premier Voodoo festival, and the self-representation of the priest of the sea cult, the Hunun of the Pope of Voodoo. This perception has been informed by awareness of the town's role through the Atlantic slave trade and the transmission of African religious traditions to the Americas, once the modern touristic slogan of Benin, and more particularly Ouidah as the cradle of Voodoo. Interesting. The diversity of the cultures or cults there are as follows. It says that it reflects the history of the development of the town and the composite character of its population, with different cults associated with the successive elements that settled in it. Local tradition distinguishes cults that date from the rule of the Ouidah kings before 1727 from those introduced under Dahomeyan rule subsequently. The principal pre-Dahomeyan cults are those of Hu, the sea, Dangabi, the python, Hoisi, the voodoo of smallpox, and Zu, the voodoo of fire. The seniority of these four having been formally recognized by the Dahomeyan authorities after their conquest of the Ouidah kingdom in the 1720s. Mind you, we're talking about a kingdom of Ouidah, also called Kingdom of Judah, also called Ouidah, also called Xwéda, etc. This is pre-colonial. This is before the Europeans were there. This is why it says pre-Dahomeyan rule, and this is how they established their kingdom. Another note would be, question you need to ask yourself: when did the Israelites form the Kingdom of Whydah? Was it 70 AD? When did you get there? Because this, according to their traditions, they have their first king around the 1600s. Things to make you say, Okay. As we keep on reading on here, it says the European accounts of Ouidah religious practice prior to the conquest, although they did not relate specifically to Ouidah, attest the existence of some of the cults later prominent in the later, including not only Dangbi and Hu, but also the worship of some lofty high trees associated with healing, referring probably to local, the African teak, and the thunder, whose bolts were believed to punish thieves. The voodoo soul who gave his name Sabaji Quarter. Other Ouidah cults and Ouidah relate to defined heroes of the pre-Dahomeyan period, notably the founder of the town, Kapsi, and the initiator of contact with European traders, Kapati, but also other kings of pre-Dahomeyan Ouidah, Abagala, Awana, and Hunu. The pre-Dahomeyan origin of these cults is confirmed by the fact that the principal shrines are located in the quarters of the town, whose origins likewise predate the Dahomeyan conquest, several in Togo, the original Ouidah quarter, but others in those of the European forts, Hu and So, and Sabaji, Kapati, and Dokom and Huasi, etc. Now, it's important why I pointed out those forts, because on these forts, these Africans were doing trade with these Pacific Europeans. These are different nations of Africans. They all were not a utopian nation. They all wasn't all together. So they would all trade with the Europeans to get guns, And in that turn, they use those guns to fight their rivals, and they wind up selling those captives. And this is what was going on actually before they got there. They just came with the technology of the gun, and that intensified everything because they all wanted the gun. Back to the cults. Cult of Dahomey origin include those connected with worship of ancestors of the royal dynasty. Royal dynasty, oh, Abraham must be coming up. Oh, nope. No Abraham. Oops. Notably, Neshui and Fan Sarami, the Dahomeyan quarter. Neshui is thought to have been an innovation of the 19th century. Consistently with this hypothesis in Ouidah, it is associated with the Dagba family, descended from the Yovagan of Ouidah, appointed in the 1820s. Another important cult of Dahomeyan origin is the Mao, M-A-W-U, very important, in Sabaji, goddess of the heavens and creator of the world. What? Oh, these dudes can't be. They saying the female is a creator. Yeah. It is said to have originated from Ajatado, once it was introduced into Dahomey by Hawanje, the queen mother of Tegbisio in Ouidah. It is associated with the Adali family, whose founder was related to Hawaji and settled in the town under the patronage. The Dahomeyan families of Wimi, Garu, worship of voodoo, specifically Wimi province, Masi, the spirit of the river. But there is one I want to really get to. Oh, this is also interesting too. I done read this book like twice, so I have some stuff. Get it, but work with me, y'all. It says also prominent in Ouidah are various forms of Dan. Oh, they got the tribe of Dan. They said the tribe of Dan. Nope. Sorry. It means the serpent deity, distinct Dangavi, and unlike him, not considered to be incarnated actual snakes. Funny. But this is the good one. So, again, we're trying to identify who these people are and what did they practice and what were their lives like. In West Africa, the religion or the culture is in tune with their way of life. When you deal with the god that they was talking about, the voodoo god called Hu, that dealt with the sea, but they also used that to implicate that they would invoke this deity through when they trade, when they're sending things to go across the Atlantic, or when they send the people to go across the Atlantic, they will perform a ceremony ritual. So I say all that to say that the religion is not separate from the culture and their way of life. It's all together. It has something to do with how they eat, how they name their people, how they bury their dead, how they go to war, how they do everything. I don't see Hebrew, but let's keep moving. Two others are distinguished as belonging to the English and French forts. Very important, those forts, which is why I brought those up. That deals with the naming of those places on the map. Another 18th century source names the cult house situated within the grounds of the English fort as that of Nana Buruku, the tutelar god of the place, while a 19th century account refers to a shrine of the king's fetish Mawu, located in the backyard of the fort. These names represent Nana Buruku and Mawu, both forms of the supreme creator deity, the former conventionally regarded as parent to the later, and the reference is clear to the Mao cult practice in Sabaji quarter as mentioned earlier. Alright, I had to stop in that book because it spoke about one of the deities created from the minds of the Africans in Ouidah, aka the Kingdom of Judah, aka Ouidah, aka Judah. Yeah. And they spoke about individual named Nana Buruku. So what I'm gonna read is from this source right here called the Encyclopedia of African Religion. I'm gonna go to some bookmarks that I put up here. Oops, not that. Okay. Nana Buruku. Remember, we talked about the farm people, right? See, that's the first people you see there, right? Blow this up. We need to see this. This needs to be clear. The farm people constituted the nucleus of the former Kingdom of Dahomey, one of the most distinguished kingdoms of the west coast of Africa. Culturally and linguistically, the farm belonged to the Ouidah group, which you heard me read about when you dealt with the Ouidah kingdom. In the farm cosmology, Nana Buruku is commonly known as the androgynous deity who represents the beginning. Although it is difficult in Dahomey cosmology to speak of one absolute beginning after reference to Nanan-bouclou has been made to the beginning. Nanan-bouclou does not appear in the story of the ordering of the world. Credit for the ordering goes to Nana Buruku's progeny, Mao Lisa. Indeed, according to Hercules, there is no specific code of Nanan-bouclou in Dahomey, although its prominence in relation to all deity is recognized. An essential element in Dahomey cosmology is the genealogy of voodoo, god or gods. The purpose is to take into account the allocation among the gods of different forces that act on men and women. To take into account the allocation among the gods and the different forces that act on men and women. The farm people speak of the world of voodoo rather than the relations between the voodoo and this world. Thus, according to the farm creation story, Nanan-bouclou gave birth to the deity Mao Lisa, which represents the sun and moon, man, woman, etc. But we got to keep going. This ain't in no this not in the Torah, bro. This definitely ain't in the Torah. But I wanted to scoop down here. Alright. Also a part of the after the Dahomeyan conquest, and also Ouidah, and that part they was the Yoruba kingdom of Oyo was coming to prominence, and these people was paying tribute, and again more culture, African culture, were mixed and blended on the coast. Because many Yoruba and farm men and women were taken to the Americas where they were enslaved, the veneration of Nanan-bouclou continued in the religious practice of Santeria in Cuba, Onatani, United States, Candomblé, Brazil, Umbanda, Brazil, Batik, Brazil, Lucumba, Cuba, etc. So you have this specific concept of deity being brought forth to all of these parts of America, coming from this specific place of Ouidah. So we're gonna go very briefly into the ports of Ouidah, see where the people came from, etc. Just wanted to add one more thing from the book Encyclopedia of African Religion in regards to the farm people and Ouidah. Here it says, in Fangbi, adept or devout practitioners of the Dangbi code are called Dansi and Dangbasi, those who are consecrated to the Dangbi divinity. It says the belief in the worship of pythons and particularly predominant in Ouidah, better called by its original name Buku in the Republic of Benin. Indeed, the Gangavi and the Vudan, or the Ouidah or Ouidah people of Buluku in the Republic of Benin. The Xwéda or Ouidah, also called Pita people, are identified. Whoa, got to blow this. Identified by their symbolic ethnic facial signs, 2 by 5, 2 times by 5 on their foreheads, temples, cheeks, or chin. Known as the religious capital of Benin, the Republic of Buluku or Ouidah is actually the cradle of Dangbi belief. We went through that already. I just wanted to emphasize this: facial marks, facial signs on their chin, etc. That does not sound like a Hebrew Israelite kingdom to me. What we're looking at is at the slave port of Ouidah, and to see how many people came out of this port. See how many ports there were. I think we can do that real quick. If we look on this map provided by Robin Law, these are the slave ports on the coast of West Africa: Lagos, Battery, Porto Novo, Ekpe, Alfanjakin, Dahomey, and the one in the center of the middle is Whydah. So when we look here, it says at the bottom, in the second half of the 18th century, the slaves exported through Whydah went mainly to Brazil and to the French Caribbean colonies, especially Santo Domingo, the future Haiti. Over the entire history of the Atlantic trade, around 60% of slaves exported from the Bight of Benin are estimated to have gone to Brazil, as against 20% to the French Caribbean and only 10% to the British colonies. The relative report is that different markets varied over time, however, with the British taking the majority of exports in the late 17th century but declining in importance after 1700 as British slaving increasingly focused on the Bight of Biafra and Angola, while the French trade grew to rival back to Brazil in the second half of the 18th century until the market in Santo Domingo was closed down by the slave insurrection there in 1791. So, as we saw during the second half of that 18th century, most of the slaves went through those French Caribbean colonies and Santo Domingo, as far as Haiti, etc. As we look at this Bight of Benin and all these other parts, it'll tell you that only 10% went or came to the British colonies, then in America, etc. This book is called The Roots of Slavery: Direction, Ethnicity, and Morality in the Atlantic Slave Trade, edited by David Ellis and David Richardson. There are a lot of documents in this book that pertain to the slave trade, as far as the forts, where to get the documents, the primaries, and the new research on it, etc. But being that we're talking about Whydah, we want to go to my bookmarks. Okay, right here you'll see total number of slave departures in the thousands from outlets in the Gold Coast, Bight of Benin, and Bight of Biafra, 1662 to 1863, listed from west to east. So we're gonna scoot over here. See, I have Whydah. See how it says 260,000 there. Yeah. So this trade is very extensive as far as on that Pacific coast, on where they were doing their trading at. Very, very Pacific. So see here it says less than the total trade, probably well over 1 million slaves left from Whydah, making it perhaps the single most oceanic outlet for slaves in sub-Saharan Africa. Lagos, the second most important slave coast port, lagged far behind, though in the closing years of the trade it was probably the most important embarkation point, and either of the rights of fact accounted for the intention it was by them receiving from the British at the time, seeking to end the traffic rather than to encourage it. Notice how in the books I'm reading they always have sources by it, so if we push it we see the source there where that came from. So I don't want to make this too long, because if we begin to get into the exact slave trade, we're going to be talking about how the kingdoms fell, who the names of the individuals are, and how the middlemen work, and all these things. It's a big kind of circle. So I just wanted to stick to the point. The point is, there is no Hebrew Israelite kingdom called Judah in West Africa. I showed you the issue being the language of the Europeans. I showed you the maps that were made by Europeans, not the Africans. I then showed you their actual language. I showed you their actual culture, and which the Europeans are actually writing down. You see their national religion, voodoo. You see their deities at the actual forts of trade, because these people are the ones that are actually doing business with these Europeans, and they're actually paying them to use this land to conduct the trade that was prior to being slaves for different products, some ivory and things of that nature. But we see them crossing the waters, and when they come across these waters in all the places from the French Caribbean all the way to the United States to Louisiana, we can see the farm people, we see them all over. Nobody gets off the boat talking about they're descendant of Abraham, talking about they are Israelite. Make sure I am clear. Talking about they are a Hebrew Israelite. You will not see that. It does not exist. And that is not a kingdom of an ancient Israelite monarchy. Doesn't exist. And then so you saw when it came about around the 1600s, could be the end of the 1500s. In that case, please tell us, when you get there? Where's the records? How come they don't say they came from the east? We came from the Levant. They don't say none of that. They tell you exactly where they came from. And their culture has nothing to do with the Bible at all. But peace. I'll leave you at that note.